Hello, everyone, and welcome to Access Interview. Today we have a very special guest. Singer-songwriter Eddie Martinez will be joining us. A veteran of the Milwaukee music scene, Eddie Martinez has played numerous venues and stages, including Milwaukee Summerfest, where he's had the opportunity to share the stage with such acts as Foreigner, Styx, and the Moody Blues. Eddie has performed with the bands Prisoner, Silent Scream, Monster Island, Bone Dance, Dimension X, Doom Street, Ugly Dog Contest, Shinola, and Third Wish. Nowadays, you can find Eddie Martinez performing with the bands Category X, Rockin' Dockin', a tribute to Dokken, and Motley Brew, a tribute to Motley Crue. Eddie has numerous musical influences, and he cites Elvis, Motown, the Beatles, Bob Seger, Journey, Dream Theater, Queensryche, Black Sabbath, Foreigner, Joe Lynn Turner, Stryper, Dokken, Iron Maiden, Led Zeppelin, Dio, Boston, Van Halen, and Queen as major influences. So without further ado, let's say hello to Eddie Martinez. The first question is, how are you doing? Tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world. What have you been doing to keep busy?
Basically doing a whole lot of binge TV. I picked up a bicycle, went for a bike ride yesterday with my lovely lady Michelle, and so I'll be doing a lot of that. Just getting a lot of stuff done around her house. She just bought a new house. And so I'm helping her out with a lot of that, but it's a struggle. I miss the music scene. You know, it was something that a lot of us, I think, took for granted. You know, because it's always been there. It's something that you know, we're all a big part of as far as musicians go, and you know, we always look forward to the weekend and getting out and either seeing a show or being in a show. And when that came to a screeching halt, it's really been an eye-opener for me as far as knowing where that fits into my life as far as importance goes, and how much it gives me peace and enjoyment, and not having that has been a struggle.
So Eddie, let's talk a little bit about your background first. You're from Detroit, Michigan, born and raised. Tell us a little bit about what it was like to grow up in Detroit, Michigan.
Tough town. Growing up there, it wasn't easy. It's a very dog-eat-dog, big city life. You know, when I was younger, as you know, my stature, I'm not exactly the biggest cat in town. And when I was younger, I was even smaller. So got bullied a lot, you know, but being bullied on the streets of Detroit kind of made me who I am. You know, I'm a no-nonsense kind of dude, and it helped me develop my sense of awareness when it comes to people. You know, I'm that guy who's always got his head on a swivel when it comes to people and their personalities, and I think growing up there really helped me kind of hone that in.
Your folks are natives of Puerto Rico, both your mother and father.
Yeah.
How did that shape you, the person that you are today?
I gotta say, you know, the Latin community, and I don't think it's just pertains to just Puerto Rican. I mean, it's Latinos in general. They have a deep spirituality, and that also comes with a moral code that translates into everything. You know, when you have that type of a moral code, you know, knowing the right from wrong, and you go into a workplace or you go into a place of business or whatever, you just kind of know how to act. And you know, my parents were tough. You know, my mom, God bless her soul, I love her to death. She's you know, she's a great woman. She was just a no nonsense, you know, person. And you know, if you met her, you know, another person is short in stature, you know, but never wanted to be taken for granted. You know, she was very well respected by all. She's the matriarch of the family, even though she's not the oldest of her sisters. And my father actually looked to her for guidance, because, you know, he didn't have command of the English language, and you know, so he was a very business savvy kind of guy. But when it came down to the numbers, my mom was his right hand lady, and so the two of them created a very formidable team, and their work ethic was second to none.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was passed down to all of us. I mean, we were like, hey, there's nothing that's going to be given to you. So you got to get out there and make it, and then double it down.
Shifting gears a little bit, you're from Detroit. You came to Milwaukee with the band Silent Scream. Tell us about that journey coming from Detroit. What was the purpose for moving here to Milwaukee, Wisconsin with the band?
Well, when I got into Silent Scream, I had been playing in bands for a little bit, and that band basically allowed me to spread my wings. It was an all original band, and I was able to write, to a lot of great music. I had Ronnie Ray on guitars, who was a very well traveled musician. His father was actually a signed country musician from Nashville, and had Scotty Harris on drums, and we had a guy named Tim Dronchev, who was actually a fireman, and he had his own heating and cooling business. He was a really unique character. He was on bass, and myself. And when I met Ronnie, he's just a really great melodic riffer. I mean, he just came up with these great riffs, and he had these great tunes. And Scott Harris actually knocked on my door out of nowhere and said, "Hey, I think you'd be perfect for Silent Scream." He had heard of me, and he gave me a demo tape, and I was hooked. And so I was going through a lot in life at that time, and what a perfect time to write some of the greatest music, is when you're just dealing with all this disaster. And it just seems like, when the heart is under pressure and strain, you can tap into some deep, great lyrics, because everybody has gone through that, and when your soul is speaking, everybody can listen, and I've always termed that term soul speak as what music is. But what came about, it was weird. My guitar player Ronnie, he lived out of a trailer in Ypsilanti, Detroit, Ypsilanti, Michigan, I should say, and we did a lot of our recordings in that trailer home. But his wife, she was from here, from Milwaukee, and they just had a baby. And his in-laws, who were still living here in Milwaukee, they really wanted to spend some time with the newborn. They contacted Ronnie and they said, "Look, here's the deal. We have a house, and we'd love for you to come out back home and bring the baby so we could spend some quality time with the baby, and we'll give you this house." He had been here before, so he was familiar with the scene, all the clubs and whatnot, and Summerfest. And so he came to band practice, and he was like, "Hey guys, I'm moving." And yeah, I mean, you could have heard a pin drop in the room when that happened. And Tim, our bass player, well, he was entrenched here in Detroit because he had his heating and cooling. He was a fire guy, and he was just like, "Wow, I guess the band's done." But Ron had approached Scott and myself, and he said, "Hey, here's the deal. If you guys want to come out, I will, put you guys up till you can get on your feet." He's like, "There's tons of musicians out there. We'll find a bass player, and we can keep this band going, and we'd have so many more places to play. Chicago was just right down south. He goes, "Why don't you guys come out and check it out?" So, like I said, I had been going through plenty in my life at the time. I was like, maybe this is what I need to do. I mean, there's no rule that says you have to stay where you were born. And it's a great big world out there. And the band was a true love of mine. And I said, you know what? I'm going to say goodbye to my family. I'm going to try and develop a better life out here. And, see where I can go with this. So we came out and we looked at Milwaukee, and it was beautiful. It was clean, and I saw a street cleaner, and I asked Ron. I was like, "They're going to have a parade? What's going on?" You know, I hadn't seen a street cleaner probably in 20 years in Detroit.
Yeah.
So we moved out, and when we did, the search was on for a bass player, and found we found Tim Bonds to play bass for us, who was just a great dude. And I mean, literally just got a text from him today
Oh,
wishing
really?
me
Wow.
happy holiday. We still stay in touch after all these years. He's like a brother to me. Just a fantastic dude, man. I mean, he's in the Big Brother program. He raised two kids up from the Big Brother program, and just a great bass player. And he had a lot of connections. So he jumped on board, and away we go. We did this for another 2.5, 3 years, and played everywhere. Played,
Playing
the
originals.
the playing
Yeah,
originals, and
that's a
we were
tough road to go
fortunate.
down. Uh,
It was, but what happened was we ended up hooking up with a band called Such Is Life, and as and Michael Shawn was in that band, and Tony Lenz and Scott Stokowski, who
I know
you
Scott
know.
quite well. Yes.
uh, yeah, and Brian Zern and Marty Zern, and I just love those guys. They were fantastic, and we just clicked right away. And they were one of the bigger bands in town, and Michael Shawn took a liking to us and to me. We developed a friendship, and we started playing a lot of opening shows for those guys, and Deja Groove, Six Pack Floozy, and there were so many places to play, and so we did that for a while. But then, as you know how bands are, I mean, things kind of went their way. But Silent Scream was a great band, and still I have a ton of memories of that band. And it led me here, and I ended up getting some deep roots here in Milwaukee through that band. And yeah, there's a big web of things that led from
Well, let's
that.
keep talking about music. So as you've evolved as a musician in this community here, let's just go back a little bit. Who most inspired you? I know this is a tough question to just pick one person, but who most inspired you to become a singer, a rock and roll singer?
It is a tough call, but I mean, Elvis, man. I mean, growing up, Elvis was king. He was the king of rock and roll.
Will we be hearing any Elvis covers in any of your upcoming shows?
Well, unfortunately, Elvis is not in my range,
Well,
Um, and honestly, as many covers as I've heard of people covering Elvis tunes, you just
so
can't do the King justice. So
leave it to history, right?
leave it be. When you saw Elvis up there delivering it and singing it, he was a rock star, man. And so definitely was the inspiration for me wanting to get involved in music.
Cool. Okay, so Eddie, what inspires you most about performing live in a band?
The energy that you get um, from entertaining people. A lot of people have asked me, wow, you're getting up there. How long do you think you're going to be doing this? Whatever.
A long time.
But getting up there and performing songs, whether they be original or cover tunes or whatever, and you're looking out at the crowd, and they're singing the words, and they're dancing, and they're rocking their heads, and just entertained. It's just an awesome feeling, because out of everything that they can be doing at that moment in time, they're there.
Hmm.
They're there watching you perform, and you are helping them with the escapism that they were looking for, to get away from the everyday. And that's something that the weekend, warriors that get out there and play their shows every weekend. I can tell you, they will all agree that energy is what keeps us going. When you're out there, that and the camaraderie with your bandmates. Uh, and it's not like a second place because when you got a great band and you're playing with great musicians and and everybody has those magic moments. Sometimes they happen all at once, which is really awesome. When you got the band firing on all cylinders and you're looking around and you're just like, wow, we are really killing it here. That energy and knowing that the hard work you put in to produce that level of entertainment and music and execution, it's so rewarding. It really is.
So, if you could give us maybe your top most memorable performance for you. I know you might come up with it now on the spot and then think later, oh, there was this one or that one. There's so many to really draw from, but what would be one of the most memorable performances you ever had?
Um, there's so many um, that had memorable moments for different reasons. I mean, you play in front of your mom. Your mom gets to see you for the first time, or your brothers, or whatever. But I would have to say when one of my bucket list moments was playing the Briggs and Stratton stage for the first time with my band Category X, and love those guys, by the way. Um, we were asked to do the Briggs and Stratton, and that was my first time playing Summerfest, and that was always a goal of mine. And after being here for over 20 years and not getting on that stage, it was a great thing. It was packed. We had thousands of people
Nice.
out there, and that was the dream. It was just like I looked out there and saw all the risers filled and people all the way back in the concourse, and we kicked it off, and that energy that I was talking about earlier was there. We were all clicking on all cylinders, and I just felt it. I felt like I was in my mojo, and I delivered one of the best performances of my life. And the cheers after every tune reminded me of being in Cobo Hall when I was a kid, looking at a band like Van Halen. It was concert level volume
Yeah,
cheers,
yeah, that's awesome.
and I'll never
That's
forget
awesome.
that.
Regarding warming up before a gig, what are some of the rituals that you go through when you warm up for a show?
Well, number one, that day I make sure I try to stay away from dairy products. Dairy products tend to build up a little extra phlegm. There's an enzyme in there that it's not good for you. So drink a lot of water, and avoid doing any excessive use of my voice. And when I get close to showtime, I would say about 2 hours before showtime, I'll go to a minute drill where I am doing some breathing, where I'm taking an inhale, maximum amount of inhale, and then I'm slowly expelling it like a hissing sound, like a tss, and a long expel as long as I can. I do some of that, and what that does is it relaxes me. It gets my heart rate down and it relaxes me, because when it comes to singing, being relaxed is one of the most important things that you can be. Um, and B, it's helping my lung expansion big time. And after I do that, do a couple of sets of that, then I kind of go through some scales, So, you
Hmm.
know, um, it'll be either mum 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 mum, and go through a scale, or nun 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 nun. Sometimes I do a g sound, and kind of go up in a scale with that. And that's also just kind of relaxing me and just kind of loosening all those muscles up. So I'll do that. And then when we start getting closer to showtime, once again I get back into the breathing, the expelling, and whatnot. And this is about a half hour before showtime. And then I'll start doing the lip trills, and everybody, I try to do this in private because people think I'm crazy, but But and I'm going in scales with this as well. This is also another relaxing technique, and it's basically just getting my vocal cords nice and loose. And then I'd say about maybe 10-15 minutes before sound check. Once again, the lip trills, a little bit of the breathing, and then I'll actually execute some scales with a little power, where I'm going oh, and I'm doing that with some power, just to see where I'm at. And
Nice.
usually by then I'm pretty warmed up.
Cool. So, staying on that theme a little bit, do you ever get nervous or butterflies before a show? And if you do, are there particular shows that might maybe raise the anxiety level a little bit more or less or none at all?
You know, my girlfriend Michelle asked me that, and to be quite honest, I don't really get nervous before shows anymore. Um, I used to. There's once in a great while, there are some shows that where, I might get anxious. I guess is a better word. Not so much nervous. I'm more anxious because I want to get up there and rock. Because it's a high profile show. Uh, I did a show at AJ's in Muskego last year, and it was the Lotta Tribuzza, which is something I put together. We usually put three bands together, and there was some pretty high caliber bands on that bill. And it was the first time my band Rockin' Dockin' was playing on there. We had Motley Crue, and then we had Thrasher following us up. And so the room was full of some great talent. But not only that, the place was packed. So I was really anxious to get up on that stage. But the whole breathing exercises and whatever would be moot if I let myself get carried away by the moment. So I get in the zone, and to be quite honest with you, it's kind of rubbed people the wrong way, because I kind of get kind of like into myself and into what I have to do, and so I'm not a real talkative guy sometimes before shows, and I don't know, it doesn't come off very well sometimes, and I'm trying to rest my voice, and I've got a lot going on in my mind. I'm preparing to do my job. It's important to me, because my philosophy is, why practice to be 100% and then show up and be on stage anything less than that. So yeah, I don't really get nervous before shows anymore. It's kind of weird.
All right, two more questions for you. First of all, is there anything that you still want to accomplish musically, whether it be a genre, a lineup, recorded material? What are you still? What still keeps you pushing forward, other than the obvious love of what you do, and for all the reasons you cited? But what have you yet to accomplish that you would like to accomplish?
Well, I actually have a few bucket list items that I've been fortunate, been blessed to be around a lot of musicians, and I've crossed so many bucket list things off. Recording, getting a CD of my own original stuff recorded at a high quality studio like Cherry Pit, and getting that out there, so people can see that there's more to me than just covering bands. I think a lot of the friends and the fans that I have made after I got into the cover part of the scene did not get a chance to see bands like Silent Scream or Dimension X, the progressive metal band I was in, or Monster Island, which were fantastic bands, and we wrote some great material. So I would love to get that down, and which leads me to the other thing, the progressive metal, that's my passion, and you ask anybody out there that knows me, Dave Berkowitz, great bass player, fortunate to play with him in Dimension X, Brian Bollet, who was a guitarist in Monster Island, his brother Dwayne, I love progressive metal, I would love to put something in that genre also onto a recording, you know. And I've had a lot of guys hit me up that say, "Hey, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it." You know, time is of the essence. Obviously, you know what I got going on. But at the end of the day, if I could put together a solo disc of my stuff, you know, my original stuff, which is not necessarily progressive metal, it's a little more melodic, and then also put together a progressive metal project and get a recording out there, that probably satisfy my bucket list.
What are you listening to these days?
I listen, you know, you'd be surprised what I listen to. um, right now, I'm listening to the latest release from Ray Alder, who is the lead singer from Fate's Warning,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a great disc. You know, progressive metal, just fantastically written, great lyrics, and he's got some really good players in on that band. Um, and then I listened to a lot of Buckethead, and for those who are not familiar with Buckethead, he is an instrumental guitar player. He puts together some really um, just crazy ambient stuff, and it's all over the board. And this guy pumps out albums. He probably has 100 albums. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
But some of it is so ambient, and when I'm doing my side work, you know, I can pop that stuff in, and it just goes, and it just puts my mind into a whole different place. Um, I just love that guy. He's just such a great player, and you know, and then I'm listening to Dream Theater's last album as well. Really good album. So I mean, progressive metal is usually what's going to catch my ear. Um, you know, it's just, to me, it hits on all cylinders, and it's so orchestrated and technical, and kind of, um, in the 80s, everybody was always trying to outdo each other. The musicianship was so over the top, where the progressive metal is just a little bit more um, orchestrated, and it still has that element where everybody's going over the top, but it's a lot more easier on the ears.
Sure. Well, before we let you go, why don't you tell us about the bands that we can look forward to seeing you perform with when on the other side?
Well, right now, you know, I'm in Category X. Been in Category X now. We're creeping up on 8 years. Got Eddie Smith on bass. We got Danny Curry on drums, and Brian Memo on guitar. And been with those guys for the full 8 years. And recently, we got Mitch Cooper on board, playing the keys and some guitar and bass. I've known Mitch over 20 years, and he's a phenomenal player and multi-instrumentalist. And so getting him on board has been awesome. You know, I want to say hello to Mark Chartre. He was our keyboard player in the past, and wish him all the best. But we went into another direction with Mitch, and things have been working out well. We've got Rockin' Dockin' is my Chicago-based band, and it's basically a Dockin' tribute band. And we've just completed a year together, and things are going really well with that band. It's awesome because since it is a Chicago-based band, I've been playing a lot of different venues, so getting into some different areas. And we've got Leiden Moon on guitar, Joel Thierfelder on the bass, and Danny Young on the drums. And these guys are great. The camaraderie in that band is awesome, and love the work ethic, and we're constantly improving. It's awesome thing. And then I got Motley Brue, which once again, that's another band, 7-8 years together. Got Pete Brown on guitar, Matt Dambeck on the bass, and Andy Martin on the drums. And that band is near and dear to me. You know, we play all the crew hits, and it seems like we take a month or two off and get together for one rehearsal and come out and do a show and just destroy people. Just a solid band and a lot of fun to play in. And it's everybody's on the same page. So hope to see you guys out there, supporting these bands: Motley Crue, Rockin' Dockin', Category X. And then, I've got some things in the works. I'm trying to get Rockin' Dockin' to actually be my backing band, and we're going to be doing some original stuff, and hope to see some of that coming out in 2020 when we can actually get back together and start going over some of the ideas that I have. But they're a solid band, and they've agreed to follow my vision and help me create that solo CD that I've been wanting to do.
Outstanding. Well, just the last question I have for you is Robert Plant or Paul Rogers? Which one?
With Robert Plant. Paul Rogers, great vocalist, ageless. Seen him not too long ago, and he looks better than he ever did. He sounds great. But Robert Plant, man, one of the all-time greats, and just a great front man. Zeppelin is one of my favorite bands. Don't get tired of it, and just the uniqueness of his voice.
Thanks again, man, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Peace.